It's Monday, August 18th, 2025, and there's no turning back for myself, for the rest of the world, and especially not for Russia and Ukraine, as today was an historic day. Zelensky, Trump, and a whole bunch of European leaders all met together in the continuing hope that we can find some kind of end, some kind of deal to end the bloodshed in Ukraine. And where did it go? What happened? And we'll talk about it here in a little bit. My name is Seanán Young. I am the host and creator of this show and Podzilla 1985 as a whole. And this show is a little bit different. I'm actually changing the format up just a tad, a smidgen, if you will. This originally, the podcast itself was meant to kind of be my own little journal of my life and the things that interest me and the things that I find interesting. That's probably the same thing. And somewhere along the way, it went from that to, hardcore journalism, to pop culture, to board games and tallywinks or whatever it is. And I don't know where the message originally got lost at, but this show, at least, I'm going to try to take back to the roots of what it was originally. And when I say no turning back, I don't necessarily just mean there's no turning back on the grand scale when it comes to the news, but also there's no turning back for myself, because today is a new day. Yesterday is over. The things from the past are in the past. Let's move on. Let's talk about things and what have I been up to? What's my interests, etc., etc., etc. So if you're looking for the full-on Seanán Young experience, you're going to get it right here more so than anywhere else. Today was a day like any other. It is becoming routine. My life is becoming routine, and some ways more boring than I'd like to let on. I told Lindsay this the other day when we were talking, that my life is so routine. It's nauseating sometimes. I have Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays away from my store, Gaming Grounds in Cape Girardeau, 711 Broadway for all your gaming needs. And on those days, we'll start on a Monday. If you're wondering what a week in the life of Seanán Young looks like, on a Monday, I get up, have my coffee. We'll just say that now. That's every morning, by the way. Every morning I have my coffee. I've turned into my father and my mother, except, still alive for now. I drink my coffee. I watch my news. At some point, I go see my good friend, Dangerous Donnie Six, or as some of you know him in the community, Don Davis Jr., who's a chiropractor here in Cape Girardeau. And I do physical therapy with Donnie. I suffered injuries either related to or made worse by my very brief professional wrestling career. And for the past year, it has been some of the worst days of my life. Unimaginable pain. Think of the worst pain that you've ever experienced. Now, think about having it every day, sometimes 2-3 times a day, depending on what you do. That's the life I have been living since whenever I finally sold my share of Cape Championship Wrestling last year, probably in, March. So pretty much from March until my surgery on April 1st of this year, I was in agony, back spasms that would literally paralyze me and shake me to the core. And I was having them multiple times a day. Sometimes I would bend over and it would happen. Sometimes I would turn, it would happen. Sometimes I would take a step back and it would happen. Sometimes I would sneeze and it would happen. It could happen at any time. And there was a seizure of pain. I couldn't move. Lasts about 3 or 4 seconds. Again, the worst pain you could ever imagine. And then it would go away. That was my life. And thanks to Donnie and my own attempts to make things better, I changed up my life a little bit. I'm definitely living healthier. I'm definitely living better. I'm proud to say that I haven't had a back spasm since April 1st. And every day gets a little bit closer to how I was before all of this happened. But we're not quite there yet, and it's a constant struggle. So I see Donnie in the morning. I usually go over to Vintage Stock here in Cape Girardeau, and I see my old friend Ken Murphy. I say hi to him, and we shoot the breeze a little bit, and I'll have a coffee from Starbucks. I come in and record this show now. That's one of my goals. And towards the end of the night, I will try my best to attend MetaZoo Mondays over at STG in Cape Girardeau, which is a fantastic card shop that we've fallen in love with over the past couple of months. Zach Kurgis is always there. Zach, who's a member of the show, is always there every Monday. Actually, I think he's there every day that they're open. I really think he has a problem that he needs to get help with. And then we record PZ85 Plays later that night. Next day, I usually try to get the movie watched for extras and epilogues. This week it's Clueless, which I would give 2 thumbs up to begin with, but you never know, that could change. I would have also said that about Dog Soldiers until I rewatched it. And after that, I usually spend time working on the house, mowing, trying to get all of pay bills, all of the non-fun stuff is usually done on a Tuesday. Tuesday is also my last day off, unfortunately. And then that night, we record extras and epilogues. On Wednesday, it's back to work, back to my store, work that through the whole day, get off, come home. Wednesday's probably the only night that I just kind of have to myself, unless we aren't able to record on Tuesdays. Wednesday night, I don't really have to do anything. All the episodes are pre-recorded. This is probably the most relaxed I am for the week. Thursday, of course, back to work. And then we record After Dark, which is one of my favorite nights. That's when I get political, but, in a inebriated way. Friday kicks off the weekend. It's time for Hot Chocobo Nights. We're doing it all summer long. Fridays we stream PZ85 Pro will probably be going forward. Rivals, whatever. We usually have Farmer Billy Hills there. Lauren, who is a friend of ours, has come on and done quite a few with us. Saturday, of course, is Repo. And then Sunday, some sickos have Sunday as the last day of the week and not the first day of the week. I'm just, trying to appeal to a broader audience. Sunday, we record. What do we record? We don't record anything. It's the last night of Hot Chocobo Nights, and we live stream usually for the longest. Last night we streamed for 6 hours. Let that settle in. We live streamed for 6 hours. That's the longest live stream I've ever done. I think I had a good time, but part of my brain is still in yesterday, so I can't tell you for sure. There's cats literally pounding at my door trying to get in like zombies from the worst zombie movie you've ever seen. So that's my week for the most part. You might say, well, where's the part where you go out and have fun and date and do that kind of stuff? I don't do that kind of stuff. Why would I? When I have this and I have you guys. I don't know if you can hear my cat crying in the background. It's extremely distracting. But I will do my best. If I seem like I'm a little distracted, I have 4 cats. I have 4 cats and I love them to death, believe me. But sometimes I do daydream about the days when I had no cats. And when I had no cats, I had a lot more opportunity to do things like this without them yelling and screaming in the background. But that's fine. In fact, you can probably tell my voice is a little bit different right now because I just paused the recording. I went out there and had a conversation with my cat, which amounts to nothing because the cat can't understand English and I can't understand meow. So there's a language barrier between the two of us. Hopefully I've learned some things. I went pss, 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 and stuff like that, and hopefully that got through to her. Anyway, so that's my week. Because of the cat, I no longer remember what the point of this whole thing was. So, welcome to my life, where I don't remember the points of things. When I did get up this morning, I watched the new John Oliver, as I do always, and I heard him talking about something. He was talking about RFK Jr. He was talking about the MAHA movement, which is a movement that I didn't even know existed. It's Make America Healthy Again, which for the past year I've been making myself healthier, not through any of the teachings of RFK Jr. or any of Trump's staff. But there was one part that really got to me when he was talking about, and I forget the name of the organization, but it's one of the organizations that's on the chopping block with RFK Jr. And he's going to apparently fire the entire, agency or the people working in the agency because they're woke. So my first instinct today, I'm actually recording this at 4:20. It must be for Zach Kurgis. My first instinct was to do a show talking about woke and how much I hate the term woke. But I wanted to do some research into this because I didn't want to just mouth off about it. I mean, I know I do that, but a lot of people listen to the show. And from what I've found out, people listen to the show that don't agree with me politically, which is shocking to me. I really just assumed that the only people that listen to the show were liberal-minded idiots who think that because I hate Donald Trump, that I'm liberal. I'm not liberal. I like to think of myself as right down the middle, and I calls them where I sees them. There are some smart liberals. There are some smart Republicans. There's also a lot of stupid, terrible ones. And when it comes to politics, I think you can pretty much say all politicians are terrible. I know there's a saying all cops are bad. I don't believe that personally. I've never been in a position where I've had to believe that though. So my view on it is a little bit skewed, but one thing that does affect me personally is politics and politicians. And I believe that all politicians are bad. Even the ones that you think aren't, even the ones that you think may be on our side, whether you are a Trump fan or maybe you're a fan of Gavin Newsom and his new policy of trolling Trump in the same way that Trump trolls everybody else, which is funny, admittedly, but I don't know how much good it's really going to do in the long run. I saw a picture today of something Gavin Newsom had posted where it was an AI image of himself with Kid Rock and Tucker Carlson and the angel of Hulk Hogan comforting Gavin Newsom, trolling what Donald Trump has done a lot in the past, where he has Jesus, giving him a handy or something because he stopped trans people from using the water fountain. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's something terrible. That was very funny. And I don't know if I get a chance to talk about it on Thursday. I'm going to get back to the woke thing here in a second. But if I don't get to talk about this on Thursday, I have to mention I saw an article on TMZ today because I do go to TMZ.com because I do hate myself a lot. And the article that I saw on TMZ was from Linda Hogan, the ex-wife of Hulk Hogan, who wanted to clarify that Hogan was not a fan of Gavin Newsom and that he was as far from liberal as you could get, almost as if she were talking directly to me and trying to get me to hate Hulk Hogan more, which is vaguely, fairly impossible. I don't like Hulk Hogan. I don't like what he became. I'm not getting into this argument again, Dalton. I've said how I feel about Hulk Hogan, and we're not doing that, but I did think it was funny that Linda Hogan thought she had to clarify for fans that no, Hulk Hogan's angel would not comfort Gavin Newsom, because who the hell has ever heard of an angel that comforted people? Makes no sense. To go back to the woke thing with John Oliver and JFK Jr., I do want to talk about the whole woke culture because I think it's gotten out of hand. I talk to a lot of people every day who use the term woke just interchangeably. They talk about it. It's a buzzword, and I don't think they know what it means. I don't think they understand what that says about you when you're anti-woke. So I want to do that. I want to talk about that soon. Maybe we'll do that next week, short of something disastrous happening, and we're talking about that. But I want to do a little bit more research into the history of woke, a little bit more research into the history of what it means to be woke, what the original intentions were, and why I think people look stupid when they use the word today. So that's next week. Let's just put a pin in that, and we'll come back to it. What I did want to talk about this week, other than just kind of rambling about my own personal life, which I really don't have anything else to say right now, other than I have 4 cats up for adoption. If anyone's interested, please email me at imjustkidding@gmail.org. I don't know what people use. No, I wanted to talk about this whole Ukraine mess because I could have sworn I've done this episode before. When I decided, okay, I'm going to do a Ukraine episode. Donald Trump met with Vladimir Putin last week. He met with Zelensky this week, and not just Zelensky. There was a whole bunch of other people there, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But I thought, I've done this. And so I looked through the backlog of No Turning Back, And sure enough, March 1st, 2022, there's an episode called Vladimir Putin in Ukraine with the description saying it's a somber return for No Turning Back. In fact, this was the first episode I did when I moved No Turning Back from its own kind of network over to Podzilla 1985, because originally I wanted this to be separate because it was going to be very serious. It was going to be like a laser focused news show, and it did not fit in to what we did over there on PZ85 with all the fun stuff. But we kind of merged everything together anyway. That's part of the charm of Podzilla 1985, I like to think, is that you come here for the laughs, but you also come here to think. You come here because it sounds like your old friends are talking to you, but at the same time, maybe we're saying something you didn't know, or maybe we're saying something that's going to change the way you think a little bit. And that's kind of our thing. We're fun, but with extra steps. So when I moved everything over here, I did all the entire backlog of the shows, and then I started fresh March 1st, 2022 with Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. And I did talk about the situation that was over there. And here we are 3.5 years later, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. This battle has been drawn out like you wouldn't believe, and there doesn't seem to be any real signs that it's going to stop. Why am I bringing it up again when it just sounds like I'm beating a dead horse? Well, if there's one person that I think is worse than Donald Trump on a political scale, it would definitely be Vladimir Putin, right? I mean, this is a guy, he's former KGB, he's the Russian president, he rules with an iron dick. I think that he is probably the most, I was going to say he was the most corrupt politician on a global scale, but I don't know. I haven't really looked into some of these other countries, and our own country is not exactly a shining beacon of morality and honesty. So, but Vladimir Putin is definitely up there. And Putin's nonsense into getting into this war with Ukraine is strictly to basically taking over the country. I mean, that is his goal. His goal is to erase Ukraine off the map and, make it, take away its individuality and make it part of Russia. You may think that, well, that sounds very familiar. That sounds a lot like Donald Trump talking about Greenland and Donald Trump talking about Canada and turning it into the party of the United States. At least with Donald Trump, he has the lack of either intelligence or backbone to just do it. He threatens. Donald Trump talks and talks and talks and talks. Kind of like me. He just keeps going and going and going and going and going. But also, just like me, he doesn't back it up with violence yet. Now, that could change one day. We are sure heading in a direction in this country that I do not like. And it sure feels like we're getting more and more brazen when it comes to the illegal bullshit that we attempt. But we still haven't done it on a level that Vladimir Putin does. Vladimir Putin is a man who literally has his enemies killed. He has his opposition killed. He, like I said, he's former KGB, which is extremely dangerous. And he's been president now, I think, for 60 years, 70 years, something like that. You can find pictures of him all over the internet trying to present himself as a strong, virile man. If you're into old Russian dudes riding horses topless, then Vladimir Putin definitely has your arousal locked down. But for the rest of us, Vladimir Putin simply remains a monster that we only hear and read about and we don't have to deal with personally. Well, that changed last week when, for the first time in 10 years, which I believe would make it the last time Trump was in office, right? So let's see, 4, 8, well, maybe before that. I'm not going to do math right now. For the first time in 10 years, I believe, Vladimir Putin stepped onto U.S. soil and was welcomed. I mean, literally had the red carpet rolled out for him. Vladimir Putin rode in Donald Trump's personal limo to the White House. Ooh, I can't imagine what that limo was filled with, but I'm sure it was supersized. And they had a behind closed doors meeting. They had a discussion. Donald Trump, to his credit, I know a lot of people say you hate Donald Trump, and I do. You have no idea. I do hate Donald Trump. But to his credit, Donald Trump is trying to broker a deal between Ukraine and Russia to end the violence. Now, whether that is because it is self-serving or he genuinely wants to do what's right and stop all the bloodshed. After all, Melania did hand deliver a written note to Putin talking about the poor kids over there in Ukraine and all the terrible things that happened. And she wrote that herself. No AI needed. She wrote that herself and gave it to him. What a brave woman. What a brave person she was there. And I'm only half sarcastic. You know, if it was Russia, he could have had her killed on the spot and no one would have said anything. But anyway, Putin came over here and talked to Donald Trump, and Trump said beforehand that there was a good chance nothing was going to happen. This was a feeling out process. He even floated the idea of bringing Zelensky in to do a three-way meeting with Putin. And before we go any further, can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Think back to when you had a job. And maybe there was somebody at this job that you absolutely hated. Maybe this person got you in trouble. I know a couple people like that. Maybe they almost got you fired. And then your boss calls both of you in to talk and just kind of hang out and see if there's anything to be done. Imagine how angry you would be at that other person and how uncomfortable you would be in this situation. Now, take that, and instead of it being your job and your own petty little, desires, stop thinking about yourself for once. And thinking about Zelensky. Think about Zelensky being in this meeting with Putin, the man that is literally trying to take over his country, the man that has caused so much death and destruction to his people. And then you've got some orange blowhard like Donald Trump trying to tell you to hey, let's work this out. I can't imagine how angry it would have been. Now, that didn't happen, but what did happen is Putin left this little meeting or whatever you would call it, and there was no deal. He did compliment the United States, and I think is something that I'm sure if Donald Trump had the stamina to masturbate, he would have gone home and masturbated too. When asked if Putin would have invaded Ukraine had Donald Trump won the last election in 2020 instead of Joe Biden, would it have still happened? And he basically, I think he flat out said, no, it wouldn't have happened if Trump was in office. I'm sure Trump really got an incher on that one, if you know what I mean. It's complete bullshit. Of course he would have invaded no matter who was in charge. But Trump and Putin do seem to have a special little connection to each other. Now, what that connection is up to, anyone's guess. My opinion, and it's just my opinion, plus like a lot of people's opinions, is that Putin is playing Trump for a fool. That Putin knows exactly how to push Donald Trump's buttons, and he knows exactly what to do to get him to do whatever he wants. In fact, during the summit we had today between Zelensky, Trump, and the other leaders from the EU, they caught Trump on a hot mic telling Emmanuel Macron that Putin wants to do a deal for him, basically making it sound like Putin is only doing all of these things because I'm in charge and he wants to help me out, like they are bros. They're not bros. And it's sad that Donald Trump can't see that, but, dictators gonna dictate, I suppose. But Putin knows exactly what to do when it comes to Donald Trump, and that's why he has been in power for so long, because I said he's a monster, and I hate it. I hate both of them. I also hate Putin, and Putin is the bigger monster. Putin is also a lot smarter and more dangerous. So I was about to say I have to give him his props. I'm not giving him his props, but there's a reason he's been in power for so long, right? There's a reason that despite everything that's happened, including Russia kind of being embarrassed by being beaten by the Ukraine when they have such a bigger military and such stronger military, he's still in power. And there has to be a reason for that. Despite having journalists killed, despite having opposition killed and imprisoning people for no reason, either the people haven't turned on him or they don't have a choice. Either way, he's still in power. So he's over in America. He's talking to Trump. They don't make a deal. And all of the right, were complimenting Trump on what he did. Everyone on the left, or quote unquote, the unbiased media, said that this was embarrassing for Donald Trump, that he comes away from this looking like a chump. I saw that over and over and over is, wow, Donald Trump got played. Donald Trump looks terrible. This is one of the worst looks he's had yet in his presidency. And look, if that gets you ratings, man, more power to you. I don't know if I agree with that, considering all of the other things that has happened to Donald Trump and that he's been embarrassed by. But this certainly, isn't a feather in his hat. I'm sure he went into this thinking that he could get his old buddy Vladimir Putin to do whatever he wanted him to do. And then it turns out that no, Putin is still going to do what Putin wants to do, but he will kiss your ass enough to keep you happy. That is right out of Donald Trump's playbook. If you kiss his ass, even if it's insincere, it'll keep him happy. Well, fast forward a couple days, we don't have a deal. And then today, I actually held off on doing this episode until after my appointment with Donnie, because I wanted to see what would happen in that meeting with Ukraine. And it wasn't just Zelensky at this meeting. It was, and I'm going to butcher so many of these names. Please, if you are from another country and listening to this show, please forgive me. Okay? The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Finland's President Alexander Stubb, Ukrainian. This is what happens when you try to say foreign names too fast. Ukrainian President Zelensky, President Donald Trump, France's President Emmanuel Macron, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, I think so. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. That's an American name, and I can't even pronounce that right. I think it's Rutte. They all kind of met together in a show of unity with Zelensky, and to make a real statement against Vladimir Putin, who warned Ukraine and European nations after the meeting on Friday not to, quote, throw a wrench in what he called important progress. This was a pretty impressive show of unity. Is this going to change anything? Probably not. But you have to believe that Putin sees this. And they also, I forget who it was, but one of these very important people thanked Donald Trump, or at least was thankful to Donald Trump, and says that he's trying to create peace, that he's making an effort. And that's surprising to me. I've never really, I know Donald Trump brags on the art of the deal and all of those things, and I know I've been very critical of Donald Trump's past history when it comes to his prowess with decision making and deal making. He is a failed businessman. He has declared bankruptcy. He did hide his taxes. He has done so many things that you would say, well, that sure doesn't sound like an expert to me. And I would agree with you. Now, whether this is also trying to manipulate Donald Trump into doing what they want, maybe they're playing the Gavin Newsom strategy, and they're trying to suck up to him so that he will be on their side instead of being combative, which we kind of have been in the past. Either way, it worked. And Donald Trump, after the meeting, said, I look forward to working and having a great result. We're really honored you guys came over. Remember what happened last time Zelensky visited the White House? It was the exact opposite. It was contentious. It was awkward. There was a moment where J.D. Vance, who I don't think was invited to this meeting and frankly shouldn't be invited to the White House, period. J.D. Vance, kind of got on to Zelensky for not dressing up for the occasion and also not for thanking the United States. Have you said thank you? So this went a lot better. And it genuinely looks like we might have some kind of peace on the horizon between Ukraine and Russia. I don't know what that looks like. And it really feels like it's an impossible dream, because I've been talking about this for 3 years, not just that one episode back on March 1st, 2022. If you've listened to the Thursday shows, especially where I do get politically inebriated, I've talked about Ukraine. I've talked about Russia before. I've talked about what a dangerous person Vladimir Putin is. I've made fun of him. I have praised Zelensky and Ukraine and their soldiers and their people for the strength they have shown. This is what real strength is. This is what real power looks like, is being the underdog and still at one time almost winning, but at least keeping what you have. And I don't know how you go from that to peace. I want it, but I think as long as people like Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are people in power, I don't understand how you have real peace. What I don't understand, I might go a little bit long on the show. What I don't understand specifically is how people can be so against each other and then turn it around and declare peace. Obviously, the United States has been, in direct conflict with lots of nations over the past however long we've been around, many years, some say, and we've made peace with them. I mean, we dropped nuclear bombs on Japan and somehow rekindled the relationship. We've done terrible things to other people. Other people have done terrible things to us. Other people have done terrible things to other people. And somehow peace is brokered. And if it's not a warm relationship, at least it is a peaceful one. I hope for the same thing when it comes to the Gaza Strip. Although my opinion on that is a little bit different. We'll get to that sometime if that ever comes about. It kind of reminds me on a personal level. So Podzilla 1985, we've been doing this for over 10 years now. And everyone that's on the show are friends or well-wishers in that they, don't wish me any particular harm. I know if you listen to the shows, assuming you don't listen to the live streams where we do sometimes argue, you probably think, man, those guys, they're great friends. They never get in fights. They never argue. They're always on the same page and they're hilarious. This is the funniest podcast. Why have they not won any awards? Why is Seanán Young not rich? Why is their Twitch not just going off? Look, a lot of questions that need to be answered, but you would be wrong in saying that we don't fight and argue. We have fought and argued many, many times, sometimes worse than others. I swear we don't go a single week without one of us making some little jab or joke or pick at another member of the cast and someone getting upset. I myself have grown weary of these people many times. I have threatened to close the show many times. I've threatened to quit the show many times. I've tried to quit the show many times. And at the very least, I will completely avoid everybody for a week or 2 weeks at a time and only interact with them on the shows. I don't look at their messages. I don't play video games with them. I don't get on a chat with them. I keep it strictly to, okay, I'll see you on the show and that's it. But at the end of the day, everyone always calms down. Cooler heads always prevail. And we are all friends again. We do the shows together. We have fun. We live stream. And it's one of those things that we genuinely, I think, care and love for each other. But imagine that. But again, like I was talking about the job thing earlier, but on a scale where we're not talking about jokes, we're not talking about jabs or anything like that. We're talking about people dying. Over, I think, 50,000 people have been killed or injured in Ukraine since this started. How do you go back from that? In the same way, talking about the bombs we dropped on Japan during World War II, how do you go back from killing so many people? What I hate, and what I guess I'm trying to get at is people's lives, especially when it comes to whether or not they deserve to live or not. It shouldn't be treated the same way you treat jokes and jabs between friends. Somewhere along the line, not Americans, this isn't an America problem, this is a human problem. Somewhere along the lines, death and the loss of life and people's liberties and stuff like that has just become another statistic. And I don't understand. I watch so much news. I take in so much news. And even though I feel desensitized to a lot of the terrible things that happen, more often than not, when I hear about an orphanage or a hospital in Ukraine is destroyed, here's how many kids are dead, or, the terrible things that are happening in Gaza and people are starving to death. I see that and I'm not desensitized to that. It still affects me. I get so emotional about it because these are people's lives. The same thing here in the United States when it comes to Republicans and Democrats, how Republicans want to take away the rights of people to just exist. They want to take away your right to be you. I don't understand how there is such a lack of appreciation, respect, and everything else for people's lives, whether it be letting them live their life or whether or not they actually get to be alive at all. And that's just, it's not new. It's been throughout history. I did a report once in college on the Crusades. If you've never read into the Crusades, it might be worth looking into. History is filled with bloodshed and death and people who wield weapons against each other without any, almost like they don't recognize the other person as a human being. I read once that the reason Star Wars stormtroopers wear helmets is because they're the bad guy and you're not supposed to sympathize with them. So by taking away their identity, all you're seeing are people getting shot that you know are the bad guy. It'd be like if you put helmets on all the Nazis in World War II and you don't have to find out who they really are and who their families are and why they came to do what they did, etc., etc., etc. I wish humanity could get back to a point where we respect each other's lives and the right to live, and the right to have independence, the right to be treated as an equal. All of the things that I've argued about on this show for the past 10 fucking years. That's not changed. And I want to throw my hands up in the air and scream and say, why is it so obvious to me? And why can't it be obvious to everybody else? But this is a race of people, humanity, that has been doing this to each other since we could think. Since cavemen beat each other to take each other's resources. There's something about humanity that you can look at a child, you can look at a transgender person, you can look at someone with different skin color than you and not see them as a human being. And that's ridiculous to me. And I will continue to pray, even though I'm not a religious person, but why not? What's the harm? I will continue to pray for peace in places like Ukraine and Gaza, and the desire and hope that I have that humanity recognizes humanity, and that every single person that dies, it's not a statistic. That's a person. That is a human life, and we need to start treating it that way. Okay. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Nothing came from the meetings this week and last week with Trump, but maybe something will. And that's my hope, that something good will happen. We will keep an eye on this, and I will keep talking about it. And next week, I'll tell you more about the weeks that I have and anything exciting that happens to me. That visit with Donnie today, that's the most exciting thing that's happened to me, not related to this show. So there's a peek into my life. And hopefully we'll have news on Ukraine and Russia, and we'll have good news to share next week. But until then, we are going to cut it off right there. I want to thank you guys for listening so much. I love you so much. I don't get to say this enough because on the other shows, I talk about how much I hate you. Don't believe that guy. Listen to this guy. He's sober and he's telling you the truth. I do love you, and I appreciate that you listen to this show. I appreciate that you listen to me ramble for 30 minutes every week. We're not done. Not by a long shot on Podzilla 1985 this week. In fact, the week's just getting started. Thank you for listening to this, but don't forget that tomorrow there is an all-new episode of PZ85 Plays. I think we have to see how Lindsay feels. She's traveling for work, and maybe she's not going to be in the mood for it, but hopefully we will have a PZ85 Plays tomorrow. Following that, we will definitely have a new extras and epilogues coming to you on Wednesday. We're watching Clueless. This is our back-to-school month. I hated Breakfast Club. Still going to rewatch it and reevaluate it. I loved Dead Poets Society. And if I had to give a grade for Clueless right now, it would be 2 thumbs up. But let's see what happens after I rewatch it. Thursdays After Dark, we're going to have a lot of fun on that. And we'll have a new top 5. We'll have a new motherfucker of the week. We'll have all kinds of good things. And then don't forget, on Friday, we kick off Hot Chocobo Nights all weekend long. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Facebook.com/Podzilla1985. And over there on Twitch at TwitchZilla1985. It's only through the summer. Don't get attached. I'm not doing shows every fucking night of the week for the rest of my life. In fact, I would like to stop doing this podcast sooner than later. But for now, you can join us weekly here on the show and then on the weekends live. It's a lot of fun. I love talking to our fans. More like friends, really. Although don't get like too obsessive, because right now I've got a great relationship with fans. If it gets to be that weird parasocial kind of thing, I'm not going to be the next Little Tay. Sorry. You're never going to see me on OnlyFans because I would have to have a fan first before I could do that. Anyway, that's going to do it for us tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow for an all new PZ85 plays. Take care of yourself, love each other, and hope for the best. Later.